this seems like a topic that men have been asking about as long as humans have existed. So it's a really important topic to dive into. The best place to start, I think, is when it comes to dating. A lot of men may set parameters, may set limits on the type of women that they, even think about approaching. Is there such a thing as someone being out of your league or dating within your league, or is that something men should put out of their minds?
Yeah, to be candid, there is definitely a such thing as leagues, and people will be in or out of your league. I think the aspect that is underappreciated is that you can control what league you're in. So it's not that you need to settle for somebody who's in your league if you can't get someone who's perceived as out of your league. You can up level yourself to make that person who's currently out of your league more obtainable.
How would you sort of define someone's league then? If someone's out there and they don't know the type of where they're at in the sort of dating hierarchy, how would someone sort of determine that then?
Yeah, well, it's determined by what you're able to catch, so to speak, like who you're able to date tells you about your league. So if you're consistently getting turned down by a specific type of woman, it might be because those type of women are out of your league. And so there's a variety of different things that play into making up somebody's league. I don't typically use the word league when I'm like describing to my clients, how to up level themselves, but it is an all encompassing sort of umbrella word for looks, status, finances. A lot of different things make up that league, and different women are going to care more about different aspects. So that's another important call out. Some women are going to care a lot more about your financial status, where many women won't. If you have other aspects that are, higher up, like you're funny or you're charismatic or you are good looking.
What is the sort of main or the biggest problem or theme that men come to you with?
So there are a couple. Definitely one of the big ones is not being able to create chemistry or flirt with the women that they're interested in. So that oftentimes manifests itself in they hear a lot of, you're a really great guy, but, or like, you're really nice, but, and the women aren't romantically interested in them. And that oftentimes comes down to not knowing how to create chemistry and flirt.
What do you think the sort of biggest barrier men face then when it comes to creating chemistry?
That they just don't know how to do it. It's a learnable skill. And a lot of guys, especially who self identify as introverted or shy, are overly concerned about coming off as creepy or pushy, which is legitimate, especially in the era of Me Too and, wanting to respect women. But at the end of the day, you do have to have a certain amount of confidence and willingness to stick your neck out there in order to attract women and create that chemistry.
I remember when I was younger, a lot of the guys I was in university with were all sort of reading the Game by Neil Strauss and books like this, and it sort of gave people a new level of confidence. But how would you sort of advise someone to balance confidence with, like you said, coming across as pushy or creepy? How do you sort of tread that line?
So I think oftentimes men end up becoming coming off as pushy or creepy when they're trying to be somebody they're not. So they've read a pickup artist book that says you must act like this, you must say this, use this line. And so they are blindly implementing somebody else's advice and not taking into account the situation, the reaction of the woman, her demeanor, which is, and when you ignore those things and you proceed blindly based on someone's advice who isn't there and isn't personalized to you, that's when you get in the dangerous territory.
So a lot of the skill, from what I'm gathering, comes from having those interpersonal skills, the sort of emotional intelligence to read someone in the moment, rather than giving yourself a set of rules or pickup lines to approach someone with.
Yeah, I'd like to think my advice sort of falls in the middle. Like, I absolutely provide scripts and sample conversations to see how things could progress. Because I think people find it very helpful to have a formula to follow, but the formula is not A plus B always equals C. It's like, okay, do A, and then if B happens, like consider C. You need to leave room for flexibility, and then you need to know the signs to look for if she's giving you a green light, a yellow light, or a red light, and then which basically path to take based on what you're taking from her. And then, I break down, okay, what does a green light look like? What does that mean? What does a yellow light look like? What does a red light look like? So when I talk to my clients, I like to be very clear on what they are looking for, but it's never one size fits all. You're never just going to blindly proceed, because based on who you are, where you live, the type of woman you're talking to, the outcome is going to be slightly different.
And so if someone was to approach someone, let's say at the bar, and try and strike up a conversation, and they're having that initial conversation, what are some, I know you said one size doesn't fit all, but what are some of the sort of universal green lights to look out for then?
Well, one thing I want to call out before I answer that question is I feel like a lot of young men, especially, think, oh, the bar is like the best place to meet women.
Mm.
And I think an important call out is, while you can absolutely meet women at the bar, and it's definitely possible based on your personality, not you in particular, but whoever is thinking about this for themselves, like the bar might not be a very good place for you to meet women. If you are shy, if you struggle to carry conversation, like that's probably not going to be that shouldn't be your go-to environment. You should consider other places. But, whether it's that the bar or another place that you're considering, some green light signals are open body language. So is she facing towards you? Are her hands down? Or does she have her arms crossed and facing away from you? That would be, closed body language. Is she making eye contact? That's a huge one. Is she smiling? And then is she asking you questions in return? If she's giving you one word answers that basically end the conversation, that's probably not a signal to a green light to keep going. Whereas if she's asking, what about you? Or what do you think based on what you've asked her? That is like the ultimate green light.
It was really interesting what you said there about where to sort of approach women, and you give the example there of the bar, but and I think this is something I've seen you talk about on one of your Instagram reels before, is that if you want to attract a certain type of person, then you should be actively looking to go to the places where those people may be socializing. I think some of the examples you gave is, like, if you're the type of person that values health and fitness, maybe a high-end smoothie shop or something like that may be a better alternative than the nightclub.
Yes, exactly. Like if you don't like nightclubs and that's not an environment you thrive in, then your ideal woman probably isn't going to be there either. So where does the type of woman you want to date hang out? And that's where you can optimize spending time.
One sort of location that a lot of people seem to think is an off limits location to approach women is the gym. Would you say that is the truth? Is that an off bounds area to approach women?
No, so I don't think the gym is an off bounds place to approach women. I actually met my husband at the gym, but it does come with different considerations than a bar or even like a smoothie shop, for example. You need to spend more time qualifying and getting to know the other person prior to asking them out, because what you need to overcome is higher. At a bar, at a smoothie shop, you're probably never going to see this woman again. So, okay, you can ask her out. If she says no, whatever. You're, like I said, you'll never see her again. If you're at the gym, you might see this person every day or multiple times a week. So, for her to also say yes is going to be a higher bar. She needs to establish some trust. She knows it's not going to be problematic if she goes out with you and it doesn't work out. She wants to know you have more things in common. So you need to develop the relationship more before making your move in environments, I call them high stigma, like a bar, like your apartment complex. You take class together, you work together.
So with that then in mind, so building that sort of like familiarity or a rapport before, approaching someone in that way, in the gym, for example, is that just as simple as just sort of over time starting to acknowledge them every time you see them, maybe, one or two words, or how do you sort of make that transition from acknowledging someone's presence then to actually starting up a conversation?
Yeah, so well, there's a few steps. There's like acknowledging presence to conversation, then conversation to asking for the date. So this is why I really like fitness classes. On the gym floor, it's harder. If a woman's, like in the act, running on the treadmill, you can't approach her. If she's in the middle of a set, like that's not an appropriate time. But if you are both in line at the smoothie bar at the gym, or you're both, in the lobby, or in terms of a group fitness class, you're both waiting for class to start. Those are good times to talk to her. And it can be as simple as, hey, I've seen you, I see you here all the time, or I've seen you here before. I just wanted to introduce myself. My name's Blaine. And you can leave it at that the first time you break the ice, because now you know each other. Now, the next time you see her, you can refer to her by name. You can just even give her a wave if it's not an appropriate time to talk. If it is an appropriate time to talk, you can advance the conversation a little bit. Oh, what'd you do this weekend? Do you have any fun plans for the holidays? This is giving her an opportunity to say, oh, I'm going to my boyfriend's house. Oh, I'm hanging out with my partner. That is going to clue you in. Okay, don't ask her out. But if she doesn't give any indications of a boyfriend, okay, you can keep having those small conversations, because what you're really looking to determine is not only if she's single, do you have things in common, or does she just look good in yoga pants? There's a big difference. And then thirdly, does she show some interest in you? So those green lights we touched on, is she giving you those green light signals? If you don't need to know with 100% certainty if those three things are yeses, but if you have reason to believe that yes, she's single, yes, we have things in common, and yes, she seems to be returning some interest from me, again, that'll probably take multiple conversations to determine, then that's the green light to ask her out.
Amazing. If we go back to the example then of, say, an environment in which you're only going to see someone once, you've really got one chance, say you're at this high-end smoothie shop, a lot of men will struggle with, especially if they're introverted, having the confidence to approach a woman to begin with. What are some of the sort of main reasons through the work you've done with the men you've worked with? What are some of the main reasons that hold people back? What is killing that confidence? Is it fear of rejection? Is it fear of embarrassing yourself? Is it simply not knowing what to say?
I think it's all three of those things. I think fear of rejection is a huge one, not knowing what to say, and then fear of being perceived as creepy is also a big one that I hear from guys. Yeah, so I think it is sort of twofold. There's the mental aspect, and then there's like the physical aspect of doing it. The mental aspect is accepting that rejection is going to be part of it. If you're hitting at 100%, you're not asking out enough women. You should be getting rejected sometimes. And I think reframing rejection just as redirection and knowing it is going to happen can be helpful. Also, if you are actually qualifying those things I mentioned, looking for the green light, then oftentimes you might approach a woman, you might talk to her, but you might not even ask her out and have the opportunity to be rejected, because you've done enough, even in a brief interaction, you've paid attention enough that you can tell she's probably not interested, or I don't actually like her now that I've talked to her. We don't have things in common, so I'm not going to ask her out. So you can remain in the driver's seat, and not because you want to avoid rejection at all costs, and rejection is the worst thing, but a combo of one, knowing rejection is going to happen, and then two, being able to mitigate it by looking for the signs of interest before asking. So those are two helpful kind of like mental tactics to just keep in mind and understand. And then this more like actually physically doing it is like, one, having the protocol. Like I have like formulas that you can implement based on where you are for approaching women that I teach my clients. And then also having an exit strategy. So, knowing like what to do, what to say if she's not interested. So you're not just standing there like, or like feeling really awkward. And then, arguably, most importantly, it's just about doing it. You have to get the reps in and you have to practice. And so I tell my clients, you should be talking to and practicing this process with all types of people, not just women you're interested in who you want to ask out. Don't wait until you see this beautiful woman that you like really want her number to practice opening and carrying a conversation. You should have done that 100 times before. So when it is the beautiful woman that you really want to chat to, you don't feel nervous. You know how to handle yourself, and you can go for it.
Amazing. Well, if we stay in the example then of somewhere like that smoothie shop, somewhere where it's not sort of a taboo area, people aren't going to assume that you're only speaking to them for maybe less than genuine reasons. and you are only going to get that one shot. What, in terms of the initial approach, do you think is more effective? Is it, do you start with a compliment, or do you start by just commenting on what, maybe commenting on the smoothie they're drinking, or the venue? Like, where do you begin? Is it a compliment or is it a conversation?
Either one. I think whatever feels more authentic to you and the situation is great. I think one of the things that holds men back is overthinking, like, I need to have the perfect opening line. You really don't. Like, if she's either going to want to talk to you or she's not. Obviously, you need to say something relevant and that makes sense. But when in doubt, you can simply say something like, hey, I noticed you from over there and I would kick myself later if I didn't come say hello. My name's Blaine. Like, you don't need to hide the fact of why you're approaching her. You can just say, like, I saw you and I was interested in talking to you. You don't need the perfect line.
And again, I think once people get to that stage, holding conversation or reaching the point in the conversation which starts to feel awkward is another problem. And so, what is there a sort of sweet spot in time, because you don't want to monopolize too much of someone's time? And where do you sort of gauge that? How long do you make that initial approach?
Yeah, that's a good question because there is a sweet spot. You need to talk long enough to establish a connection and build some trust, but not so long that you've like killed the vibe and she's like wanting to get back to her friends. So again, that's going to be a little bit case by case and you're going to be looking for those green lights and signs. Um, and it depends on the environment. Like, if you guys are both at the park and she's sitting on a bench and like clearly neither of you are in a hurry to go someplace, you might chat for 5 or 10 minutes if the conversation is going really well. Versus like you're going into the smoothie place, she's going out, it might be as quick as a few lines, and then it's like, hey, I know this is quick, and we just met, but I really like your vibe and I would love to continue the conversation. Can I get your phone number? So it's a I know that's not like, oh, this is always the answer, but yeah, it really depends on the situation and like how things are going. But I will say this guys make often is rushing that. Is rushing the, hey, they have their opener and then they immediately are like, hi, it's like so nice to meet you. They introduce you. I'd love to take you out. Can I get your phone number? And it's like that is too quick because why you? She doesn't know you yet. And also signals that you don't have standards for who you ask out. You should want to talk to her a little bit, understand her vibe, like if you guys have some sort of connection before you spend your valuable time on a date with her.
Yeah. And when it comes to those scenarios, like you said, you have to expect rejection. It's just a part of what this is. Once you face that rejection, how does, how should we deal with rejection? What should that look like? And how can we sort of ensure that we're walking away from those encounters, with our integrity, with respect for ourselves and the other person?
Yeah. So, if a woman says, oh, no thanks, then your reaction should be in line with the meaning, like with how that like affects you. And the answer of how being rejected by a stranger affects you should be very, very little. This
Hmm.
is not somebody you know. So why do you care what she thinks? If she is a bitch to you, even more reason that you're like, oh, thank God I didn't go out with her. She doesn't even know me and she was rude to me. Okay, bye. Um, so I think it's important to remember, if you have high self-worth and you're not seeking validation from people you date or approach, then rejection tends to sting a lot less. And then also just accepting that, like, 2/3 of women between the ages of 18 and 38 are going to be in relationships. Some of those women aren't going to like men. Some of those women are going to be having a bad day. Some of those women just simply aren't going to like the look of you. And that is, again, an okay thing. Then it tends to feel less personal when someone isn't interested in giving you their phone number or taking the next step.
So let's go down the road of, say, the interaction's gone very well. The person gives you their number or they agree to a date. And again, I know it's not a one size fits all, but what typically tends to be, a good idea for a first date? Obviously not something, again, that's going to monopolize someone's entire day. You still want to give them time to go about the day as they otherwise would have. But you don't want something that's too fleeting. when it comes to first dates, what should men sort of be looking to do?
Yeah, so I personally believe a first date should be very lightweight. You want to make it easy for her to say yes to. Like you said, if it monopolizes half her day, she has to travel far to get there, it's a large time commitment, she's going to be a lot more less inclined to say yes. So ease of yes. What's something she can drinks that she can stop by before dinner with friends, or meeting for tapas, on a Tuesday night before after work, like something that's going to be quick and easy to get a vibe check, because especially if you met online, but even if you met in person but only briefly, you still don't really know each other. So neither party really should want to invest a significant amount of time yet. It's a little bit different if you were like set up by friends or you are friends already, so you already know you enjoy each other's company. Then you can do more of like a full dinner. It's a little more involved because you know you're going to have a good time either way. But for somebody that you don't know, you want to keep it lightweight.
And so the date goes well, or you think it goes well at least. You exchange numbers. What does the guy have to do in terms of maybe not showing your hand too fast? Say you're extremely interested in this girl, you think, wow, I can't wait for a second date. You come away and every instinct in your body is saying, I need to send her a text and tell her again how great the date was and I can't wait to see her again. Is that showing your hand too fast, and sort of how long do you leave it and sort of hold yourself back from, what your mind is telling you to do?
Yeah, so I'm all about communicating interest. Like that is important, but you need to balance your amount of interest with an appropriate level of investment based on how long you have known this person. So it's okay that you feel excited and interested in this person, but you don't want to go all in. So one of the things that I'm actually a proponent of, which I mean some people find controversial, is if you really like a girl after a first date, that's all the more reason that you should continue to go on other first dates. Keep meeting other people so that you don't overinvest and put all your eggs in this basket and make her feel, that'll oftentimes put too much pressure on her as well, and it signals that you don't have a lot of options.
Yeah, I suppose as well, it's going to sort of warp your sense of how interested you are in that person if they're the only person you're dating as well.
Exactly. If you feel like, oh, I have to make this work because this is like the best option I have or the only option I have, that's going to impact how you interact versus like, okay, I like this person. She's great. But if it doesn't work out, then I know how to meet other women. I have other women in my funnel. Like, it'll be okay.
Where do you think? I mean, these days dating seems to be, going more and more online, or there's certainly the option for that. A lot of people out there, I think, feel more comfortable with online dating, but maybe secretly inside they think there's some sort of shame about meeting someone online, or they want that sort of romantic story of how they met their partner at this, really scenic coffee shop or something like that. In the experience with the guys you work with and the places they meet women, is there a difference between meeting someone online and in person, and what effect that has on the relationship going forward?
So, first of all, I don't think there's anything wrong with meeting anybody, somebody online. It's how the vast majority of couples meet right now. But what I would say amongst the men I interact with and work with is that they oftentimes have a tendency to rely too heavily online, where they should be like, they might be focusing on how can I game the algorithm, or how can I get one better picture to therefore get more matches, rather than just, okay, how can I approach one woman a day? How can I pick up a hobby that is going to put me in front of the women I want to meet? People have a tendency, I think men and women right now, to too heavily lean on technology and dating apps, because that's what we're accustomed to. It's how we order our groceries, it's how we get our dinner, it's how we watch TV, it's how we interact with our friends. And the reality is, I don't think I think dating apps have a time and place. I think when used appropriately, they can be very beneficial, but they can't take the place of meeting in person. And the reality is, some guys just aren't going to do well on apps. Dating apps aren't catered to a certain subset of people. And if that's you, then spending more time on the apps isn't going to be helpful.
When these guys are, on their dating apps, what are some of the biggest problems that they feel they're facing? Is it maybe, finding it hard to pick the right profile picture, or how to reflect themselves in a bio? What do they find the biggest challenges with online dating and putting themselves out there?
Well, their challenge they feel is maybe different than like the cause of those challenges, which
Okay.
is what you mentioned. Their challenge is, oh, I'm not matching with the type of women I want to match with, or I'm not good at converting my matches into dates. But the root causes of those problems are usually bad profiles, primarily profile photos, but oftentimes a lack of effort with prompts and bio, and then not knowing the formula or how to carry conversations from a match to segue into a date.
Hmm. So, in terms of, say, someone's out there right now with a very poor profile photo, what are some key things they can add to their profile that you think will help them optimize their profile overall?
So the most important thing when it comes to an online dating profile is your photos. And I get it. Guys don't usually take a lot of photos with themselves. They aren't out with their guy friends being like, hey, take a photo of me in this tree or like me and my brunch plate. Like that is something girls do. So girls have a plethora of good photos for their dating apps and men don't. So hands down, the single most important thing you can do is upgrade your photos.
Hmm. And sort of what sort of photos are we looking for? Is it, as you mentioned, they're just a single shot of someone, or maybe someone, doing something that's really interesting or socializing, so you're signaling that you're a social person? What
Yeah.
types of photos should you be focusing on?
So you kind of want a mix of all of those things, but the key is that you want high quality and you want to be able to
Hmm.
see what you look like. Not all six of your photos need to be like a headshot where it's very clear what you look like, but like the overall culmination of your photos needs to be very clear what you look like, and also ideally showcase how you spend your time. We don't want just 5 or 6 photos of you sitting looking at the camera. Maybe one photo like that so we can really clearly see what you look like, but then there might also be a photo of you playing ice hockey if that's something you're into, or traveling to Barcelona on your like trip, or a photo with you and your family to give a well-rounded picture of how you spend your time. And then again, the theme that should be across all your photos is these need to be high quality. If they're grainy, if they're pixelated, if they're really far away, that doesn't qualify as a high quality photo.
Hmm. And I don't have personally too much experience with dating apps. I met my partner in person, but I imagine that the first thing you see is someone's photo, and you're probably not going to bother reading the bio unless the photo sort of you pass the photo test. I imagine.
Exactly. You're not even going to look at the rest of the photos unless that first photo is good.
And so, someone's bio, then, what should you be looking for there? Because a lot of people you like to use their bio to express what they're into, their interests, but you don't want to just formally list out, "Hey, I'm 28 years old. I like this, 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 this." And then some people go the other way and they try and make their profile like their bio like a joke. How do you sort of present what you want to present in an engaging way without it seeming too formal like a job advert?
Yeah, yeah, you're spot on. You don't want it to feel like a resume. You're not trying to tell this woman everything about yourself in your bio. You are simply sharing enough information to get her to swipe right on you, to say yes to your profile of it, basically. Then you're just gonna have enough conversation to get on the date. Again, I think a mistake I commonly see guys make at each step of this is trying to get all of the information about them into their bio, trying to cover everything about why she should go out with them via text before the date. And it's like each step is just enough to get to the next step. So when that comes to bio, like, yeah, you're sharing maybe some of your hobbies, some of your interests, to especially hobbies and interests that may overlap with hers, because that's going to give you something to talk about. And then you're keeping it lightweight. This is a stranger. So it should be lightweight, flirty, fun, not too serious.
I don't like to use the term power dynamic, but in terms of online dating, do sort of women hold that power dynamic, and that their choice, their net is a lot wider, the choices they have available to them than the men in terms of the amount of matches they get.
Yeah, totally. That's true of top of funnel dating, both online and offline. Top of funnel, women have more options. Women are the choosers. So when it comes to online, understanding that, okay, this woman is looking at hundreds, if not thousands of profiles, and basically will have her choice. So why me? You need to think about that when you're looking at your own profile. What about my profile is going to stand out? What in my profile can she connect with that she's going to want to learn more about? If you just have a super generic, boring profile, then you're just going to get lost in the masses.
Another frustration that I remember a lot of my friends having with these online dating apps is that they may match with a woman, but then fail to get a reply. They think that because they've got that match, it means that the girl's interested and she's going to reply. But they find that more often than not, they don't get the reply. So why would that be then? Is that, do you think, just down to that opening message?
It might be that they fumbled the opening message. More often than not, it's just that she has too many options top of funnel. And so that's why it's important to remember, like, you shouldn't be emotionally invested at all in somebody you message with. This is not even, you don't even know if she's a real human at this point. This could be like a 12-year-old boy,
Yeah.
impersonating her. So that's all the more reason to not get in your feelings if things don't progress. And some of the ways, and that is another reason that online dating can only take you so far. These women, like I said, have so many options, especially the highest quality women with the most options meet a lot of guys offline. So if she's a lineup of guys offline and a lineup of guys online, a lot of those guys aren't going to translate into conversations and dates. And you have a better chance of being able to stand out offline than you do
Yes.
online.
I suppose there's probably an opposite effect when you're online, and that being behind a keyboard and not being there probably gives some people too much confidence, and they sort of go in with these sort of over the top, sort of flirty, jokey or pickup lines, and they sort of try too hard. With that first message on a dating app, how different is that to how you approach someone in person?
You have to be a lot more specific on a dating app. Like I said, in person, you can literally say, "Hey, I've seen you here before," or like, "You caught my eye, so I wanted to say hello." That's not going to cut it on a dating app. Everyone's saying, "Hey, what's up? Hey, how was your weekend? Hey, what'd you do today?" That's boring. So what? You're not going to stand out from everybody else. Whereas in person, the simple act of you approaching her and having the confidence to start a conversation in person is setting you apart from everybody else.
Hmm. And I imagine the sort of the next stage then that someone who's online dating or they've made that message, they've got the reply. The next sort of mental win or sign of interest for them is moving from that platform to something a little bit more personal, maybe text or WhatsApp or whatever other platform. Um, how
Maybe, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, how long do you think that you should stay on that platform? Or is it possible to stay on that platform, arrange an in-person date, and never move to text message before you meet them?
Yeah, that's definitely possible, and I've actually been seeing more of that recently. I think like a couple years ago, or like 5 years ago, it would have been more unheard of to go directly from app to date rather than having the texting in between. But I think people are at a point where if you're only online dating, which is the sad reality for a lot of people, you don't want to be giving out your phone number to every single guy that you match with and want to consider a date with. So I've been hearing more and more women saying like, "Hey, I'd prefer to plan the date on here and exchange numbers later, and then only exchange numbers if the first date goes well."
And sort of how long do you think that a sort of texting phase or messaging phase on an online platform or maybe via text before you meet that person in person? You don't want to rush it, of course, and seem too desperate, but also you don't want to prolong it where that person only sort of thinks of you as, again, as you mentioned earlier, not a real person.
Yeah. So this does have more similarities to in person from the standpoint that it's going to need to be dependent on how long it takes you to establish trust and create a connection. So the quicker and better you are at creating connection, finding commonalities, the quicker you can ask for the date and have a realistic expectation that she will say yes. Whereas if you're having a lot of pleasantries and not really forming a connection, but exchanging messages. That's going to take you longer to get to the point that she probably wants to say yes to a date. But it's probably never going to be, it could be same day. It could absolutely be same day that you match if you exchange a few solid messages. And it should never be more than a few days or a week. And that's like under the assumption that, okay, there's lots of time between the messages. This is if you are becoming a pen pal, if you're texting every single day for weeks at a time and you haven't met, that's a huge no-no in my book.
Mhm. One, again, I'm not a big fan of the word ick, but one sort of ick that female friends of mine have always mentioned to me is the quote unquote nice guy. I don't mean nice guy in terms of someone who's just generally respectful and a decent person. I mean a nice guy in terms of someone who sort of goes above and beyond to sort of white knight and sort of explain to you why they're such a nice guy and why you should think they're a nice guy. Um, what is the sort of woman's perspective of that type of person?
Well, I think you just touched on it actually. It's not that women have a problem with you being respectful and being caring and being empathetic. Those are all great qualities in a partner. What women don't want to see is that you bend over backwards for somebody you barely know, that you go out of your way to accommodate people besides yourself. Like, those are nice. If you're in a relationship, sure, you make compromises, you do things for the other person. But if you're doing this for a stranger, she's probably not the only one you're doing it for, and that's what's a turnoff. You can take that back to like caveman days. Does she want the caveman who's like going after what he wants, who's confident in his decisions, who doesn't take shit from anybody? Or is she going to go for the guy who's like giving away all of his resources and trying to make sure everyone else is happy and accommodate them before himself? Like, one is more attractive than the other. And that's why I think sometimes guys are like, oh, women like assholes. And it's like, it's not that women like assholes, is that assholes have specific qualities that actually are attractive in a romantic partner.
That's interesting. That's something else I really wanted to ask you. Was this sort of stereotypical bad boy type of person that you see in the films and the movies that girls gravitate towards? What are the qualities you mentioned there? What are the qualities that are quite redeeming in someone like that?
Yeah, confidence, I think, is number one.
Yeah.
Willingness to set boundaries with other people. So, not just doing what someone else wants in order to please them, but really like thinking, like, okay, does this also serve me? Um, what else would be relevant for dating? Going after what they want. I think an important call out here is also like some women might be in a place in their life where they do date assholes, and for whatever reason that's who they're going after. And if that's not you, like, you shouldn't, that's not going to be a good fit for you. She's not going to be a good fit for you anyway, and that's a her problem. You might be able to do better in being confident and being less of like the ick nice guy we just talked about. But ultimately, if she's looking for someone who actually mistreats her and is a toxic person, which both men and women do, that's not for you to fix. And that just disqualifies that person as being a good candidate, as someone you would want to date.
I'd love to get your take on, and we touched on this earlier, some of the like very old school pickup artist type of tactics and some things I never really understood. I'm not sure if this was out of the book I mentioned earlier, but I remember there being this sort of big thing around what they used to call negging, where you give sort of like a negative compliment. I don't know, you say something like, I usually hate when girls do that with their hair, but yours looks better than, whatever, something like that. Sort of putting a negative spin on it to try and sort of drop that person's guard a little bit, make them feel a little bit insecure. Is there anything to sort of tactics like that, or are they just sort of toxic, negative things that we shouldn't even concern ourselves with?
So I feel like as a whole, that is not the foot in which you want to start a conversation or a relationship on, is putting somebody down as a
Yeah.
way to, and then giving them validation. First of all, I feel like a truly confident, high quality woman probably isn't going to fall for that. And it's just going to be a turnoff because she can see through it. And then second, it's just, it doesn't make you look or come off particularly confident either. So, but what I will say is that there is something to that, in the fact that the goal of that is to make her feel something. You want her to feel things when she's talking to you. In my opinion, feeling insecure is not the feeling you want her to have, but you do want her to feel something. You might want her to feel special or intrigued or excited or that you're funny. Those are good things that you want her to feel. So I would say focus your conversation on making her feel things, but not negative things.
Amazing. Well, I just wondered then, we mentioned earlier, and we've mentioned a few times throughout this conversation, that obviously one size doesn't fit all, and you have to rely on things like, your emotional intelligence, your interpersonal skills, your communication skills to sort of read body language in the moment. But have you ever found that there's sort of one thing or one type of sort of, not tactic, but one thing men do that the majority of women respond well to, that very few men actually do?
Hmm. I think the most universal thing that men can do, and I don't know that most men don't do this, but is simply have confidence. It doesn't guarantee that a woman is going to be romantically interested in you just because you're confident, but it does give you the best possible shot. And it can be the difference in her being romantically interested and not being romantically interested.
Amazing. That's one of the themes I'm getting from this, is that, anyone out there that's sort of looking to, as we touched on at the start, maybe move into a sort of different league or sort of speak to higher quality women, then is just everything seems to stem from confidence and building your confidence, and that really being the skill you need to focus the most on.
Totally, because I can give you, or like you can find, and even the pickup artist books, you can find all of these tactics and ploys and recipes and how to things that you should be doing. But if you don't have confidence, doing those things isn't going to get you very far. It might get you nowhere, or you might get past step one, but you're probably not going to get to the relationship point or to multiple dates if you don't have that in underlying self confidence. And building that up actually has nothing to do with dating. You don't get more confident by sleeping with more beautiful women or by even approaching more beautiful women. You get confidence by being happy with who you are and authentically being yourself. And that's the other problem I have with some of these pickup artist books, is like they're asking guys to pretend to be somebody they're not. If you're not extroverted, you don't need to pretend to be extroverted to get women, but you do need to be okay with who you are. And you might need to develop some skills and hobbies that, one, boost your confidence and then give you access to more of the type of women you want to meet.
What are sort of the biggest mistakes then that a man would make it during the dating phase? Like, are there any sort of red flags that you've seen pop up during that initial maybe 1 to 3 dates where a man can sort of turn everything on its head and sort of ruin it?
Yeah, so we touched on this before, but emotional overinvestment. So if you let yourself get carried away and you start imagining a future with this woman before you even really get to know her, that has a tendency to torpedo potential relationships. It actually shows a lack of confidence. It shows a lack of boundaries. It's a nice guy symptom, the not the nice guy that you want to be. And that is a common thing. It's that I see happen, and it's understandable. You really like this person, you get excited, but not pumping the brakes and taking it slow can take what could be a blossoming relationship and end it very quickly.
And sort of to tie a nice bow on this conversation, then we started by talking about how to approach women both in person and online. And I know that there are women out there that like different things and respond well to different things. But what is typically the first thing a woman would notice about a man? Maybe not approaching it, but in a social setting. Is it their confidence? Is it their behavior? Is it their looks? And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. What typically is the first thing a woman would notice about you?
I mean, it's true. Like you are a book that is judged by your cover. Like the first thing before you even open your mouth that she is going to notice is your appearance. And so that doesn't mean you need to look as a specific way or look like a GQ model, but you should be wearing clothes that accentuate and are good for your body type. You should be well groomed. That means a haircut that is suitable for you. That's not universal to all men. Um, Nice teeth, that means brushing them. It might mean whitening them. So just taking little steps to upgrade your appearance is what is going to help you get your foot in the door, to show that you are confident, to carry that interesting conversation, to ask her on the date.
Amazing. Well, the sort of final question that I ask every guest that comes on the show, whether they're a dating expert or a scientist or an actor or whatever, I ask everyone the same question. And this can be something personal, it could be to do with your work. Right now, for Blaine Anderson, what makes life worth living?
Oh, okay, I have two parts to this answer. I'm 7 months pregnant, so that
Wow,
is like definitely the
congratulations.
forefront, thank you, of my mind, as like, okay, growing my family and being a good partner and mom and all the things that are going to come along with that. And then from a work perspective, truly nothing brings me more joy than getting testimonials from clients saying, "You changed my life. I met my girlfriend because of you. I'm getting married because of you and what I learned in your class." Like, nothing makes me happier. So, personally and then professionally, those are my two.
Well, those are two beautiful answers and beautiful reasons, and congratulations on both.
Thank
For
you.
anyone out there now who maybe has watched this today and was unfamiliar with your work and they want to check out more from yourself, maybe they want to become one of your clients, where's the best place we can direct these guys to?
Yeah, super easy across all social media. Dating by Blaine, at Dating by Blaine, and datingbyblaine.com. The easiest way to get in touch with me is I have an application on my website and on my Instagram bio. Takes less than 60 seconds to fill out, and you'll get an answer within 24 hours directing you to how to work together.
Amazing. Well, I'll leave all those links in the description below for everyone to check out. But Blaine Anderson, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been an absolute pleasure to speak with you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.